Ralph stumbled home drunk one night, crawled into bed next to his sleeping wife, and quickly fell into a deep sleep. He awoke at the pearly gates where St. Peter told him, "You passed away in your sleep, Ralph." Shocked, Ralph protested, "No, I can't be dead. I have so much to live for. Please, send me back." St. Peter replied, "I'm afraid there's only one way back. You must return as a lesser being, an animal." Devastated, Ralph begged to be sent to a farm near his home. The next thing he knew, he was covered in feathers, clucking and pecking at the ground. A rooster strutted by and said, "So you're the new hen, huh? How's your first day going?" "Not bad," Ralph the hen replied, "but I feel like I'm about to explode." "Oh, you're ovulating," said the rooster. "Haven't you ever laid an egg before?" "No, never," said Ralph. "Well, just relax and let it happen," the rooster advised. "It's no big deal." Ralph did, and moments later, an egg popped out. Overwhelmed with emotion, he laid another egg, his joy growing with each one. But just as he was about to lay a third, he felt a smack on the back of his head and heard his wife's voice. "Ralph, wake up! You crapped the bed!" Marvin lay in the hospital, nearing the end of his life. The family called for the preacher to be with him in his final moments. As Marvin's condition worsened, he motioned for someone to bring him a pen and paper. The preacher quickly handed them to him, but before he could read what was written, Marvin passed away. Deciding the moment wasn't right to read the note, the preacher tucked it into his jacket pocket. During the funeral, while speaking about Marvin's life, the preacher suddenly remembered the note. "I just remembered," he said. "Right before Marvin passed, he gave me a note. Knowing Marvin, I'm sure it was something deeply inspiring that we can all learn from." With that, the preacher pulled out the note, opened it, and read aloud. "Hey, you're standing on my oxygen tube." A man lay on his deathbed, surrounded by his family, his weeping wife, and 4 children. 3 of the children were tall, handsome, and athletic, while the youngest, a small and unattractive boy, stood out as quite different. With his last breath, the husband whispered, "Darling wife, please promise me that the youngest truly is my child. I need to know the truth before I die. I will forgive you if—" The wife gently interrupted, her voice full of reassurance. "Yes, my love, absolutely, no doubt. I swear on my mother's grave that you are his father." With a peaceful smile, the man passed away, content. As he did, the wife muttered to herself, "Thank God he didn't ask about the other 3. 6 retired Floridians were playing high-stakes poker in the condo clubhouse. During a particularly tense round, Ron lost $5,000 on a single hand, clutched his chest, and dropped dead from a heart attack. In respect for their fallen comrade, the remaining 5 continued the game standing up. Abraham looked around and asked, "So who's going to tell his wife?" They cut the cards, and Saul won the dubious honor. They urged him to be discreet, gentle, and careful not to make things worse. "Discreet? I'm the most discreet person you'll ever meet. Discretion is my middle name," he assured them. "Leave it to me." Saul knocked on the Myers' apartment door, and Ron's wife answered. "Yes? What do you want, Saul? And where's my good-for-nothing husband?" she asked. Saul hesitated, then said, "Ron lost $5,000 playing poker, and he's too afraid to come home." "What?" she screamed in disbelief. "Tell him to drop dead." "Can do," Saul replied. An arrogant, wealthy man passed away, leaving specific instructions in his will. He entrusted $100,000 in cash to each of his closest advisors, his accountant, his doctor, and his lawyer. The will stated that they were to place the entire amount into an envelope and put it in his coffin so he could enjoy his money even after death. At the funeral, each advisor brought a large envelope and, one by one, placed it in the open casket. After the funeral, as they walked away from the cemetery together, the accountant couldn't hold back any longer. "I have to confess," he said. "I didn't put the full amount in. I kept $20,000 for myself and only put $80,000 in." The doctor, feeling guilty, replied, "I should come clean too. I kept $30,000 for myself and only put $70,000 in." The lawyer, looking down at the others with disdain, scoffed, "I'm ashamed of both of you. Our client specifically asked for $100,000 from each of us, and I did exactly that. I put in a check for the full amount. A man is going skydiving for the first time. After what feels like an eternity of listening to the instructor, he finally feels ready. He climbs into the airplane and waits to reach the right altitude. Excited, he jumps out and begins his free fall. After a moment, he pulls the ripcord. Nothing happens. He pulls again. Still nothing. Panic sets in, but then he remembers his backup chute. He yanks the backup cord. Nothing. Desperation builds as he pulls both cords simultaneously, but nothing works. Suddenly, he looks down in disbelief. There's another man falling alongside him, but this guy is going up. As the man draws closer, the skydiver shouts, "Hey, do you know anything about skydiving?" The other man shouts back, "No, do you know anything about gas stoves?" On the outskirts of a small town, there was an old pecan tree just inside the cemetery fence. One day, two boys filled a bucket with nuts and sat down out of sight, dividing them up. "One for you, one for me, one for you, one for me," said one boy. A few nuts rolled down toward the fence. As a boy rode his bike along the road, he thought he heard voices coming from the cemetery. Curious, he slowed down. Sure enough, he heard, "One for you, one for me, one for you, one for me." He immediately suspected what it was. Panicked, he rode off and soon met an old man walking with a cane. "Come here, quick," the boy exclaimed. "You won't believe what I heard. The devil and the Lord are down at the cemetery dividing up the souls." The old man, irritated, replied, "Get out of here, kid. Can't you see it's hard for me to walk?" But the boy insisted, so the old man hobbled to the cemetery with him. Standing by the fence, they heard the same familiar chant. "One for you, one for me, one for you, one for me." The old man whispered, "Kid, you weren't lying. Let's see if we can spot the Lord." Nervously, they peered through the fence, but still couldn't see anything. As they gripped the bars tighter in anticipation, they heard, "One for you, one for me. That's it. Now let's go get those nuts by the fence and we'll be done." The old man beat the boy to the gate. Some time ago, a man had two sons. As they grew up, it became clear that Jackson was very sharp, while Blake, well, wasn't exactly the brightest tool in the shed. Despite this, they were both loved dearly by their father. As the years passed, the father grew ill and eventually passed away. Jackson, ever the responsible one, called Blake to let him know, "Listen, I have an incredibly important business meeting, but I'll be on the first flight home. Here are my credit card details. Please make sure Dad looks his best and gets everything money can buy for his funeral. Spare no expense." Jackson wasn't entirely confident in Blake's ability to manage things, given his track record, but had no other choice. Surprisingly, Blake handled everything quite well and managed to stay within a decent budget. Jackson was impressed, and the funeral went smoothly, though it was, of course, an emotional occasion. A few months later, Jackson called Blake again. "Listen," he said, "I don't want to accuse you of anything, but I've noticed about $300 charged to my card each month. What's going on?" Blake, sounding offended, replied, "Of course not. I would never steal from you. You know that." Jackson replied, "Yeah, I know. But how do you explain these charges?" "Oh," Blake said casually, "I bet that's for Dad's tux. You told me to make sure he looked his best, so I rented the most expensive suit in town." As a man lay dying, his wife kept a candlelight vigil by his side, holding his frail hand as tears streamed down her face. Her soft prayers stirred him from his slumber. Slowly, his pale lips began to move. "My darling," he whispered. "Hush, my love," she replied gently. "Rest. Don't speak." But he was insistent. "I have something I must confess," he murmured in a weak voice. "There's nothing to confess," his wife responded, her voice trembling. "Everything's fine. Please just sleep." He urgently blurted out, "No, no, I must die in peace. I slept with your sister, your best friend, her best friend, and your mother." His wife whispered calmly, "I know. That's why I poisoned you." A very sick man lay in bed, knowing his time was short. He asked his nurse to gather his wife, daughter, both sons, witnesses, and a camera to record his final wishes. Once everyone was assembled, their faces filled with emotion, he began to speak. "My son, Sam, I want you to take the Ocean Reef houses. My daughter, Sybil, you take the apartments between mile markers 100 and Tavernier. My son, Jamie, I want you to take the offices over in the Marathon Government Center. Sarah, my dear wife, please take all the residential buildings on the bay side of Blackwater Sound." The nurse and witnesses were stunned, not realizing the extent of his holdings. As Doug slipped away, the nurse turned to his wife and said, "Mrs. Smith, your husband must have been such a hard-working man to have accumulated all this property." The wife grunted and replied, "Has a paper route." A newlywed farmer and his wife were visited by her mother, who immediately demanded an inspection of their home. The farmer, eager to foster a friendly relationship with his new mother-in-law, did his best to be cordial. However, she constantly nagged them, offering unwanted advice and demanding changes, making life miserable for the young couple. One day, while walking through the barn, the farmer's mule suddenly reared up and kicked the mother-in-law in the head, killing her instantly. At the funeral a few days later, the farmer stood by the casket, greeting mourners as they walked by. The pastor noticed something strange. Whenever a woman whispered something to the farmer, he would nod and reply. But when a man whispered to him, the farmer would shake his head and mumble something back. Curious about this odd behavior, the pastor asked the farmer later what was going on. The farmer explained, "Well," the women would say, "What a terrible tragedy." And I'd nod and agree, yes, it was. The men, though, would ask, "Can I borrow that mule?" And I'd shake my head and say, "Sorry, I can't do it. It's booked up for a year." Three retired gentlemen sat together, enjoying coffee and reminiscing about their life's experiences. One of them suggested that they each share their most exciting experience. The first, a retired sheriff, began, "Well, back in my younger days, I was involved in a shootout with Bonnie and Clyde. It was a terrifying but thrilling moment." The others nodded in agreement, acknowledging the excitement of such an encounter. The second, a retired fireman, shared his tale. "I once fought a massive fire at the university. There were flames everywhere, fire trucks from several departments, and countless damsels in distress to rescue." His companions agreed that it certainly sounded like an adrenaline-pumping experience. Finally, the third gentleman, a retired undertaker, began, "One night I got a call from the local Hilton Hotel to pick up a body. I got to the room, and there was the body under a sheet. Everything seemed fine, but when I uncovered it, there was a huge bulge, if you know what I mean. And I knew there was no way I could get him through the lobby looking like that. So I grabbed a broom and gave that bulge a whack as hard as I could to make it go down." The fireman looked confused and asked, "No offense, but how was that exciting?" The undertaker sighed deeply and replied, "Turns out, I was in the wrong room." Three writers, Jack, Eddie, and Carl, attended a writing convention and booked a 3-bedroom suite on the 75th floor of a hotel. Upon their return, the receptionist apologized, saying, "I'm terribly sorry, but all the elevators are broken. For now, you'll have to take the stairs." Now, Jack was a writer of funny stories, Eddie wrote scary stories, and Carl specialized in sad tales. To make the climb more enjoyable, they came up with a plan. Jack would entertain them with his funniest stories from floors 1 to 25, Eddie would tell his scariest stories from floors 26 to 50, and Carl would share his saddest stories from floors 51 to 75. As they began the climb, Jack started with his funny stories. By the time they reached the 25th floor, Eddie and Carl were laughing hysterically. Then, Eddie took over with his scary stories. By the time they reached the 50th floor, Jack and Carl were clinging to each other in fear. Finally, Carl began to tell his sad stories. "I'll start with my saddest story of all," he said, smiling nervously. "There once was a man named Carl who left the hotel room key in the car. A zoologist, a doctor, and a politician are kidnapped by a deranged psychopath. The psychopath says, "You'll each hold the world's most venomous snake for 10 minutes. If it doesn't bite you, I'll let you go. If you refuse, I'll shoot you." The zoologist steps up first. Using his expertise, he carefully reaches for the snake, aiming for the back of its head, but the snake is faster. He's bitten within seconds and drops dead. Next, the doctor approaches. He examines the snake, looking for the safest way to handle it without causing stress. Just as he grips it, the snake bites him too, and down he goes. Finally, the politician steps forward. He shrugs, muttering, "Hey, what's the worst that could happen?" He picks up the snake with zero caution. To everyone's surprise, the snake doesn't bite him. 10 minutes pass, and he's released. As the politician leaves, the psychopath glares at the snake. "Why didn't you bite that last one?" The snake sighs and mutters, "Professional courtesy." One day, a woman was chatting with her friend, and the conversation took an unexpected turn. The woman said, "You know, I have to be extra careful to make sure I don't get pregnant." Her friend, puzzled, responded, "But didn't your husband get a vasectomy?" The woman sighed and replied, "Exactly. That's why I need to be even more careful now." Two attorneys boarded a flight out of Seattle. One took the window seat, and the other sat in the middle. Just before takeoff, a physician boarded and claimed the aisle seat next to them. The physician kicked off his shoes, stretched his toes, and settled in. A few minutes later, the attorney by the window said, "I think I'll grab a Coke." The physician smiled and said, "No problem, I'll get it for you." As soon as he walked away, the window seat attorney picked up one of the physician's shoes and spat in it. When the physician returned with the drink, the middle seat attorney chimed in. "That looks refreshing. I think I'll have one too." Again, the physician obliged and left to fetch another Coke. While he was gone, the second attorney grabbed the other shoe and spat in it. The physician returned, handed over the drink, and everyone settled in for the rest of the flight. As the plane began its descent, the physician slipped his feet back into his shoes and immediately realized what had happened. With a deep sigh, he said, "How long must this childish feud go on? The hatred between our professions, the animosity, the spitting in shoes, and the pissing in Cokes." My first job was at an orange juice factory, but I got canned. I just couldn't concentrate. Then I worked as a lumberjack, but I couldn't hack it, so they gave me the axe. After that, I tried being a tailor, but I wasn't suited for it, mainly because it was a so-so job. Next, I worked at Starbucks, but I had to quit. I got tired of the same old grind. I thought being a chef would add some spice to my life, but I just didn't have the time. Then I worked in a deli, but no matter how I sliced it, I couldn't cut the mustard. My best gig was as a musician, but I realized I wasn't very noteworthy. I even studied to become a doctor, but I didn't have the patience. Later, I tried working in a shoe factory, but I didn't fit in. Then I became a fisherman, but I couldn't live on my net income. A job at a pool maintenance company seemed promising, but it turned out to be too draining. After that, I gave a fitness center a try, but they said I wasn't fit for the job. I finally got a gig as a historian, but, well, there was no future in it. My last attempt was at a muffler factory, but the work was just too exhausting. So now I've retired, and you know what? I finally found the perfect job. One day, Pete complained to his friend, "My head's killing me. I think I'd need to see a doctor." His friend replied, "Don't bother. There's a computer at the drugstore that can diagnose anything faster and cheaper than a doctor. Just tell it your problem, pour in a urine sample, and it'll tell you what's wrong and what to do about it. Costs only $20. Pete figured it was worth a shot. He filled a jar with his urine, went to the drugstore, found the machine, and followed the instructions. The computer whirred, beeped, and after a moment spat out a slip of paper. "You have migraines. Rest more. Drink plenty of fluids. Avoid bright lights and stress. Come back in 2 weeks." Pete was amazed. This thing's incredible. But as the days passed, he began to wonder. Can this thing be fooled? Determined to test it, he created the ultimate sample. He mixed tap water, a stool sample from his dog, urine from his wife and teenage daughter, and even added some oil from his car. Feeling quite clever, he returned to the drugstore, poured in the concoction, and fed the machine another $20. The computer whirred and blinked as usual. Finally, It spit out this analysis. Your tap water is contaminated. Your dog has ringworm. Your teenage daughter is pregnant. Your wife has had 5 lovers in the past 6 months, and your car needs a new radiator. The note concluded, "Now do you see why you have a headache?" A psychologist was doing his morning rounds when he entered a patient's room. He found one patient sitting on the floor, vigorously sawing at a piece of wood with the side of his hand. Meanwhile, another patient was hanging upside down from the ceiling by his foot. Curious, the doctor asked the man on the floor, "What are you doing?" The patient replied irritably, "Isn't it obvious? I'm sawing this piece of wood in half." The doctor then pointed to the man dangling from the ceiling. "And what's he doing?" "Oh, that's my friend. He's a bit crazy. He thinks he's a light bulb." Concerned, the doctor said, "If he's your friend, don't you think you should help him down before he hurts himself?" The patient looked up, horrified. "What? And work in the dark?" A woman is in the kitchen calmly cooking eggs when her husband bursts in wide-eyed and panicked. "Be careful! Careful!" he shouts. "You need more butter." "Oh my gosh, the eggs are going to stick." Startled, the wife rushes to the fridge for butter. "Too many eggs. You're cooking too many at once. Turn them now." Panicking, she hurries back to the stove. "Where's the butter? Are you crazy? They're going to burn! Hurry!" Frustrated, she runs back to the fridge. "Watch the eggs. Don't you ever listen? They're sticking. Turn them. Not like that. Are you insane? Who taught you how to cook?" At this point, the wife is in tears. "What is wrong with you? I know how to cook eggs." Her husband steps back, smiles calmly, and says, "I just wanted to show you what it feels like to drive with you." A woman discovered her husband was cheating on her, so they divorced. She moved on with her life, but she couldn't shake her hatred for him. One day, while walking down the street, she found an old, dusty lamp. Curious, she picked it up and gave it a rub. Suddenly, a genie appeared. The genie said, "You've freed me. I'll grant you 3 wishes, but there's a catch. Whatever you wish for, your ex-husband will get double. Sorry, rules are rules. This genie contract was written in ancient times." The woman thought for a moment and made her first wish. "I want to be rich." "Done," said the genie. Instantly, she became wealthy beyond imagination, but her ex-husband became twice as rich. For her second wish, she said, "I want to be beautiful." "Granted," said the genie. She became stunningly gorgeous, but her ex-husband became twice as handsome. The genie smiled. "This is your last wish. Choose wisely." The woman thought long and hard. Finally, a sly grin spread across her face. "I wish to be scared half to death." A henpecked husband went to a psychiatrist who advised him to assert himself. "You don't have to let your wife boss you around," the doctor said. "Go home and show her who's in charge." Feeling empowered, the husband marched home, slammed the door, and glared at his wife. "From now on," he growled, "you're taking orders from me. I want my dinner on the table immediately. After that, you'll go upstairs and lay out my clothes. Tonight I'm going out with the boys, and you're staying home where you belong." He leaned in closer and roared, "And one more thing. Do you know who's going to tie my tie for me?" His wife looked at him calmly and said, "I certainly do. The Undertaker." A young farm couple, Homer and Darlene, had just gotten married and couldn't get enough of each other. Every morning before Homer left for the fields, they made love. When he came back at noon, they made love again. And of course, they ended the day with one more round before bed. But the noontime rendezvous became a problem. Homer spent half an hour traveling home and another half hour getting back to the fields, and his work was suffering. Frustrated, he went to the town doctor for advice. "Homer," the doctor said, "just take your rifle out to the field. When you're in the mood, fire a shot into the air. That'll be Darlene's signal to come to you. No more wasted time traveling." The plan worked like a charm. Whenever Homer felt the urge, he'd fire a shot, and Darlene would come running. They'd find a secluded spot, have their fun, and get back to their respective work. A few weeks later, Homer returned to the doctor's office looking distraught. "What's wrong, Homer?" asked the doctor. "Didn't my idea work?" "Oh, it worked great," Homer said. Whenever I was in the mood, I'd fire a shot, and Darlene would come running. We'd do our thing, and then she'd head back home. So, what's the problem? Asked the doctor. Homer sighed. I ain't seen her since hunting season started. A married couple moves into a new home. A few days later, the wife says to her husband, Honey, one of the pipes in the bathroom is leaking. Could you fix it? The husband replies, What do I look like, a plumber? And goes to bed. A few days later, the wife says again, Honey, my car won't start. I think it needs a new battery. Could you change it? The husband frowns and says, What do I look like, a mechanic? A week goes by, and the wife asks once more, Dear, the roof is leaking. Can you do something about it? The husband, frustrated, replies, What do I look like, a roofer? Take care of it yourself. He leaves for a week on a business trip, and as he's about to leave, he says, When I come back, I want all this fixed. A week later, he returns and is amazed to see the roof fixed, the car running, and the pipes all replaced. Great, he says. How much is this going to cost me? Nothing at all, his wife replies. The neighbor came over and said he could fix everything if I baked him a cake or slept with him. Wow, says the husband. What kind of cake did you make him? The wife smiles and replies, What do I look like, a baker? A husband sat on the edge of the bed, watching his wife gaze at herself in the mirror. With her birthday approaching, he asked, What would you like as a gift? I'd like to be 8 again, she replied, still staring at her reflection. On the morning of her birthday, the husband jumped into action. He woke up early, made her a big bowl of Cocoa Pops, and then whisked her away to Adventure World theme park. It was an action-packed day. He took her on every ride in the park. The death slide, the wall of fear, the screaming roller coaster, everything. After 5 hours of adrenaline-pumping fun, they staggered out of the park. Her head was spinning, and her stomach was in knots. Next, he took her to McDonald's and treated her to a Happy Meal, extra fries, and a chocolate shake. Then they went to the movies with popcorn, soda, and her favorite M&Ms. Finally, they wobbled home, and she collapsed into bed, completely exhausted. With a big smile, the husband leaned over and asked, So, what was it like being 8 again? Her eyes slowly opened, her expression turned to one of disbelief, and she snapped, I meant my dress size, you idiot! There was once a very prim and proper older lady who had a problem with passing gas. Coming from a generation where such things were never discussed, she hesitated for a long time before seeking help. Eventually, though, she was convinced to consult her family doctor. After filling out the necessary forms and waiting for about 20 minutes, the doctor called her into his office. He leaned back in his chair, folded his hands into a steeple, and asked, How can I help you today? Doctor, she began, I have a very bad gas problem. Yesterday afternoon, I had lunch with the Secretary of State and his wife and had 6, silent gas emissions. Last night, I had dinner with the governor and his wife and had 4 silent gas emissions. And while sitting in your waiting room, I had 5 silent gas emissions. Doctor, you've got to help me. What can we do? The doctor paused for a moment, then said, Well, Margaret, I think the first thing we're going to do is give you a hearing test. 2 nuns who worked in a hospital were out driving in the country when they ran out of gas. Standing beside their car on the shoulder of the road, they were approached by a trucker. Noticing their predicament, he stopped and offered to help. When the nuns explained that they had run out of gas, the trucker said he'd be happy to donate some from his tank, but he didn't have a bucket or can. One of the nuns, thinking quickly, dug out a clean bedpan from the trunk and asked if it would work. The trucker agreed, and after draining a couple of quarts into the pan, he handed it to the nuns, waved, and drove off. As the sisters were carefully pouring the precious fuel into their gas tank, a cop happened by. He stopped, watched for a moment, then said, Sisters, somehow I don't think that's going to work, but I sure admire your faith. A gentleman went to the dentist's office to have a tooth pulled. The dentist pulled out a freezing needle to give him a shot. No way, no needles, I hate needles, the man exclaimed. The dentist then started preparing the laughing gas, but the man objected again. I can't do the gas either. The thought of that mask suffocates me, he said. The dentist asked, Well, do you have any objection to taking a pill? No objection, the man replied. I'm fine with pills. The dentist returned shortly with a tablet. Here's a Viagra, he said. The man, totally confused, stared in amazement. Wow, I didn't know Viagra worked as a painkiller. The dentist smiled. It doesn't, he said, but it'll give you something to hold on to while I pull your tooth.